Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
On this episode of the Kindness Project, we talk about old people's home for 4-year-olds, personal achievements, and part 1 of the interview with Mike Dickson, author of Our Generous Gene.
Hello, and welcome to the Kindness Project.
I'm your host, Barry.
I'm your host, Barry. My name's not Barry, my name's Chris Davis. But I'm joined by a girl who will eventually support me in old age. It's Barry. Charlotte. Last week we got a bit obsessed by the name Barry.
It stuck.
And that Barry obsession seems to continue.
Okay, well, I'm joined by a man who hates feeling old but responds to old man.
That's funny, isn't it, that we both had, because we never know, listeners, what introduction we're going to have for each other. And there are two elderly introductions, which is interesting. So how are you going to help me out in my old age then?
Stick you in a retirement home.
Stick me in a retirement home? That's hardly helping me out, is it?
Well, I could put you in that old people's home for 4-year-olds
thing. What a show! What a show that is. Old people, listen, if you haven't heard, listeners, or if you haven't seen Old People's Home for 4-year-olds,
watch it.
This is a podcast superficially about kindness, isn't it? So, if you are going to watch any sort of TV show that shows how awesome people can be,
your BFF Beryl.
Old People's Home for 4-year-olds is definitely it. And actually, I think we should do a Kindness Project special all about the
BFF Beryl
lessons learned through
the BFF Beryl.
Well, we talked about Barry. Now we've got Beryl in the mix. I tell you what, if I change my name to Barry by Deepole, and I'll give you permission to change your name to Beryl, would you do it?
Yeah.
I thought you would. Barry and Beryl Dames, that sounds old, doesn't it? Christ. But yeah, Old People's Home, we are joking.
I'm not.
All right, Beryl, calm down.
Shush, Barry.
The Kindness Project, hosted by Barry Dames. Oh, God. You know what this is a lesson in? Do not record the Kindness Project late at night when we're both tired. That's just the worst time to do it, because the nonsensical level just goes up a notch. None of it makes sense. It doesn't make sense at the best of times, let alone when we're tired. Anyway, Beryl, can you please tell people how they can get in touch with us?
Of course, Barry. At Honor Kindness. You just
at the Beryl Barry Show.
Oh gosh, yes. That's a life I want to live. And then you go into Facebook and you slap the Kindness Project in that magical search bar thingy. And then the email is ola@thekindnessproject.co.uk. #Beryl.
Hashtag of the week. Hashtag of the week. We should do a hashtag.
We should do a hashtag of the week.
Hashtag of the week. The hashtag is Beryl and Barry, right? Last week it was just hashtag Barry. This week it's
Beryl and Barry, and next week it's Lavinia.
And there's a Lavinia. Are you just gonna pick characters from the Old People's Home for 4-year-olds and just
next week it'll be Victor, and then it'll be Ken.
Constantly talking. This isn't the Old People's Home for 4-year-olds podcast. This is the Kindness Project.
Okay.
But it's
a cracking show.
Awesome. I did have a little cry on Saturday morning when we watched it because it was super.
We've still got one episode left to watch because there's only 5 episodes.
Yeah. So this week's question of the podcast that people can reach out.
How do you rename yourself,
to you, Beryl, and me, Barry,
yes.
And tell us what they want to tell us is. What's the personal achievement you're most proud of? How about you? What, Charlotte?
Don't ask me this, I don't know.
What's the most personal achievement you're proud of?
How about you, Barry?
Changing my name to Barry, number 1. But also, I'm most proud of you. and Sophie.
Oh,
and Mummy.
shucks.
I am. Have I embarrassed you now? Are you going red?
I'm a red barrel.
I'm an orange barrel. Anyway, let us know, listeners, before we descend into any more madness.
Too late.
What personal achievement are you most proud of?
Hashtag barrel, hashtag barrel.
Barrel. Let's move on to kindness news. Is the blinking helping?
I just wanted you to click
Why are you blinking so much? It's time for another kindness news.
Yeah.
Is it Barry edition?
No.
Oh no! I want a Barry edition kindness news. Can you make it?
I'll see what I can do.
Please make a future edition of Kindness News Barry edition. We've got to have that. It's not Barry edition, so what edition of Kindness News is it?
It is student edition.
I'm sure we've had student edition before.
Well, apparently there's a lot of student kindness going on.
There must be. There's not a lot of Barry kindness. Is there any Beryl kindness going on?
Nope, I haven't found any.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Tell us about the students that are being particularly kind.
Okay, so the first one, Riverside County Schools launch kindness campaign.
Okay.
It's time to be kind to one another on campus and to count the ways. That's the message behind a new effort from the Riverside County Office of Education. The Riverside County Million Deliberate Acts of Kindness campaign aims to inspire positive school culture by urging schools across the country to help measure 1 million acts of kindness by students, staff and the community. Many schools already had such a focus, but the initiative intends to promote and share best practices across districts and suggest new ways to make kindness activities into classrooms and campuses.
See, I like that, sharing what you do to be kind, because some people would say the best acts of kindness are anonymous acts of kindness, and actually I don't think that's true. I think if you share the acts of kindness you're doing, you're more likely to encourage. I've just had a look at that screensaver and there's a picture of me doing the Karate Kid. You're more likely to encourage other acts of kindness, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got more. Okay, second one. Marshall County High School students mural sends message of kindness. We choose kindness. That's the message students from Marshall County High School want to spread with a new 8 by 12 foot mural. Mural.
Meow.
The project
Is that the word mural or a cat impression? Meow.
Both. The project is student-led. It comes after the tragedy that struck their community when 2 lives were taken in a shooting in Marshall County High School. The artists say the 3 painted hands in the We Choose Kindness mural symbolises people coming together to choose kindness over anything else.
I like it.
I hope that people can understand that being nice is really easy. Project creator Hayley Riley says. Riley says she was going through some tough times after the unthinkable happened in her own school. Sure about what she went through, but it wasn't enough. She's bringing those words and ideas to life. Riley chose from 60 mural entries, and We Chose Kindness stood out to her. I think that when they see this, they should see the hands stand out. You should hold hands and kind of join all together and be really friendly toward one another. They will mount the mural at the Kindness Garden with benches to sit at. It will be handcrafted by students. The bench just kind of means if someone sits there, you know, they're having a rough day.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything to them. You don't have to acknowledge it. You just sit there with them, and that person that is going through something knows, hey, they're there for me.
Now, I don't know whether they've got that at your secondary school, but they had a bench at your primary school, didn't they, that was like that? Is
I think
that right?
so. I can't remember.
Didn't have a bench that if somebody sat there, you knew they were lonely or having a tough time, and you used to go and sit down with them.
Oh, that was secondary school.
Was it?
Yeah, and it's just kind of, everyone's just, because I kind of just sit there now, people just kind of...
I was turning to your bench, is it? The paid paper of the whole church's bench.
What can I say?
Okay, fair enough. That sounds really good. Thanks for that kindness news.
No problem.
So this week we've got the first part of our interview with Mike Dickson,
Cool.
who is an amazing guy. He used to run businesses. He used to run retail shops. and retail shops. Is there any other kind of shops than the retail shop? I'm not sure. Online
Service shops.
Maybe, yeah.
Like a masseuse.
He didn't run a masseuse. I think it was a clothes shop. But then he left all that to
Start a life of adventure.
in a masseuse. No, for a charity called WizKids, which he built from nothing to a really, really big charity. And his life took a turn, and now he writes about philanthropy, charity, and there's not that many people who know more about philanthropy and charity than Mike Dickson. The books he's read are amazing, but instead of me talking about it, let's hear our interview with Mike.
Cool.
Hi Mike, thanks for joining us today, really appreciate it.
Hello, Chris.
How are you doing?
I'm doing extremely well.
So we're getting together on the hottest day or so far this year. How you found it? You've just come back from Scotland, haven't you?
Yeah, it was 10 degrees cooler
Okay.
in the Highlands of Scotland, which meant that when one landed at Gatwick, it was like, you know, when you go abroad and you land in somewhere like Malta, and you
Yeah.
get off the plane and you go, wow.
Yeah.
It's like that coming back to England.
It's really hot.
Really,
Yeah.
really strange.
Yeah.
But I think tomorrow Friday is going to be the hottest.
And what are you up to tomorrow? Are you sort of staying in the shade?
Yeah, no, serial meetings all day long,
Okay.
you know, and phone calls.
Okay.
Work,
Yeah.
but work at a steady pace.
Good. Pleased to hear it.
Yeah.
Now, we met a few years ago by accident when you were based, I think we met at your office over near Regent Street or something like that. I can't remember.
The Haymarket.
It was in the Haymarket, that's
That's
right. And you gave me a copy of your book, which I read. When I had a copy of your book, the Kindness Project didn't exist. It was only a new thing.
Yeah.
But since we've recorded a bunch of podcasts now, your name popped up on my Twitter feed, and I thought, why haven't I invited Mike on the podcast? Because I've read his book and read your new one, and it was all. He's a perfect guest for this sort of thing. Now, I could tell our podcast listeners why, but you're best to. So tell us a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. Well, I've never, rather strangely, I've hardly ever in my life worked for anybody at all.
Okay.
So when I left school, I was really dismal at school. I didn't really understand what was going on at all. But when I left school, I got a few temporary jobs, and then quite soon afterwards, I started my first commercial venture in a desperate attempt to make some money.
And what was the first step into
It was a
that?
stall in Petticoat Lane.
Okay.
At the time, I worked for The Economist during the day, but every weekend I went down to Petticoat Lane and ran a stall. And then I started one in Portobello Road, and so on and so on. And then eventually I started a business, can you believe, renting bicycles out to tourists in the summer. Which, like all businesses, was sort of all right and very exciting in the summer, and then not very
Quite
exciting
quiet in the winter.
Very much. And then that led on to retailing bicycles, and then we had a retail company.
Okay.
And so I built up a business, but I've never been if you might call the operational person in a business. I'm very good at starting things, and everything I've started, I've always done succession planning.
Yeah.
Always planned to get out the day I start.
So very entrepreneurial mindset, business growth, not business continuation. The interesting thing is you had the idea for Boris Bikes before Boris Bikes existed. Is that right?
Exactly. Before Boris Bikes, I wish I'd known more about it at the time.
Yeah.
I think it's just a different mindset. You know, I'm really, really good at starting things.
Okay.
I've got very strong nerves and wonderful networks and vision and all that. But the more people become involved in it, particularly at board level, I begin to lose the will to live.
Sure.
And for example, one of my own personal rules, I've got several, but is that I never ever go on the board of anything.
Yeah.
I'm asked about 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah.
I never go on the board of anything at all because I'm just not good at that sort of behaviour.
Same. I get asked to do this sort of stuff quite a lot, and I'm sort of learning how to say no a bit more, because I know what frustrates me most of all is death by committee. So So I don't mind in our little business team where we can take some action, but yeah, as soon as you get too many people involved, getting stuff done tends to take too long.
I've been the chairman of my own board,
Yeah,
but I really can't be doing with other. I really do begin to feel like a serial killer after a while.
Okay.
I can't do it. So every time I start something, there are two key things. The first is that everything from day one has what I refer to as monthly management accounts. So I know the difference between dreams and reality from day one.
Okay.
Actually. And I also, on day one, I always work out when I'm going to leave.
Do you establish that at day one?
Yeah, I always get it wrong. But at least I do get out.
What is it normally longer than you assume it takes, or less time?
It is. It always takes about a year and a half, 2 years longer to get out. But at least I do it.
Okay.
And I know it of myself.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm bad at motivating people and leadership and all that. It's just I begin to go off the boil. And lose the will to live.
It's like it's interesting when you talk about that sort of stuff, because I like I think it was Churchill who said that planning is essential. Don't expect the plan to be completely accurate, because everything gets in the way, doesn't it? So just having that set goal in time is useful, even if you don't hit that particular time target. Just having something in your mind that I'm getting out sometime is useful.
That's what Stephen Covey said. You start with the end in mind. So you know what you're trying to do, and you just have to adjust the plot all the time and overcome barriers and reversals on the way to getting to wherever you're going. 7 habits, that is, isn't it? You're trying to learn how to do it. But when I start something, the day I start it, never ever occurs to me that it cannot be done. Which is very, my wife thinks it's an amazing achievement.
Have you always had that in you? Has that just been, do you think that comes from parents? Do you think that comes from just some inner self-belief? Are you...
I think it's probably learnt street sense. You can learn how to be streetwise, and you finally realise that actually, if you have an idea to create something, you can create it if you can persuade enough people to help you do it. If you can't persuade enough people to help you do it, then you're probably not going to get away with it.
So it's having an element of skill to ensure that you bring people along the way, right?
Yeah. And did you ever remember that TED talk? It was that wonderful TED film. It was about 3 minutes long, called First Follower. And it's a wonderful.
Oh, is it the guy dancing on a hill? Yeah, it's awesome. Love that TED talk.
He gets up and dances on the hill, and everybody goes, "You're mad." And then the next bit gets up and dances on the hill, and other people think, "Oh, that's right." And they all get up and dance on the hill. And the TED talk's wonderful because it's only 3.5 minutes long. But it's very true. The leader needs the first follower or followers.
But it's about having that bravery to start dancing in the first place, isn't it? Knowing that there's a lot at stake. Often it's in your own head more than anything else. But the assumption that nobody's going to dance with you is a bit of a scary one sometimes.
So I've perfected the art of doing that sort of thing. But it's all about persuading other people to help you do something and create something.
So you built a retail, you built the bike shop. Where was that? It was in London, wasn't it?
London, and a couple in London and some in West Country.
Okay.
But then, we came to the moment that changes one's life. When I went to a drinks party one Christmas, and I was challenged to run the London Marathon. And after several glasses of wine, I said, "I'll go and do it." And those were the days when you couldn't just get a place in the London Marathon; you could only get them through the sponsors. So I said I would run the London Marathon at the age of 14. And then I went home, and on January the 18th, the date engraved in my brain forever. It shows you how long ago it was. A fax came through from the then athletics correspondent of the Sunday Times, who said, "This is a training schedule for the London Marathon. It's in 12 weeks' time. You need to go and run." And I was absolutely horrified by this, because I've been I'd been basically caught out, I'd been called.
Yeah.
So I phoned a friend of mine, and to cut a long story short, we started training to run a marathon. And before we actually ran the marathon, we'd only ever run 6 miles.
Okay.
Pathetic. But two weeks before, I'd seen a little girl go into one of my shops in Covent Garden, and she was in a powered wheelchair, which meant that the back of it was a bit like a bumper car, and the front was like a forklift truck.
Gotcha.
And she pressed the seat on this button on the seat. The seat went up. She bought something, and then she put the seat down. And then she whizzed off around Covent Garden, and I remembered seeing it. And I thought, well, if you're going to run 26.2 miles for something, you might as well try and do it to help a child who can't move at all move.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was going to do something mildly heroic and active to help a child who couldn't move.
Yeah.
So anyway, I rang up the manufacturers and I said to them, we need a disabled child. I've never met a disabled child before in my life. And they said, well, we have a girl who has cerebral palsy, and she's just been let down, and she could do with a powered wheelchair. So I said, how much are they? And they said, well, they're £3,500.
Okay.
And I said, so where is this child? And they said, Lincoln.
Okay.
And I said, Lincoln? Don't you have any children in London? And they said, no.
Have you got any local kids?
It was just awful. And so I got on the train, I went up to Lincoln, and I met this little girl, who was then a little girl called Sammy. And she had cerebral palsy, still obviously has, and a severe speech impairment. She couldn't move on her own. She lived with her grandmother, and I was profoundly moved by her. So I asked her for a picture and came back to London, and we sent out a picture of Sammy with a little thing saying we're all going to run for Sammy to all our friends, and by the time we got to the start line, we'd raised about £9,000.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And so we set
and
off,
enough for the chair.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
quite enough.
Yeah.
So we set off into the distance with very little idea what we were doing at all. And 6.5 hours later, I got there.
I did my first marathon last year. I did Paris, and I was super slow. I was sort of 5:40, something like that. And you know what? I think anybody who does it, regardless of what time, it's a challenge, isn't it? It's a super achievement. The interesting thing for me was I was expecting Paris to be like London, and the Parisians are just way too sophisticated to worry about these guys running around their city. It was funny because I've told this story in the podcast before because it's one of my favourites, but I got sort of 14 miles in, and I was so slow. I had my wife and girls at mile 18 phoning me and going, there's a guy with an Eiffel Tower on his head just gone past. Are you anywhere near yet? Or there's a guy with a tutu who's just run. So all the fun runners are faster than me. But there was a guy who wanted to cross the road, and he had his bag of shopping in one hand and a baguette in the other, and he started waving the baguette to try and sort of knock these, because he wanted to cross the road, to try and get these runners out of the way. So I just had this, this little vignette in your mind. Came back, first client I saw said, he said to me, how was the Paris Marathon? I said, yeah, it was really good, but I almost got attacked by a man with a baguette. And he said, could you make that sound any more French? And I don't think I could, to be honest, but certainly that experience. I mean, I cried at the end. Just getting there was something I loved, and just having that sort of drive to do it to help somebody. I suppose help with that. Yeah. Would you ever do it again?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
1 year after we did this ridiculous thing.
Okay.
We ran it in, whenever it is, April, and then a group of us went and did the New York Marathon.
Okay.
And then in the following April, 1 year after we'd run the marathon, we founded WizKids as a charity.
Okay.
And now it's over 25 years old, and it's taken, as I've told you once, it's taken over £100 million and helped over 20,000 disabled children who can't move.
It's incredible.
Amazing. So it was a thing that so it made a difference to Sammy's life, but it completely changed mine.
Okay.
I became much less objectionable, really quite normal and humbler, little bear, and starting the whole charity and watching the good that other people could do for other people.
Okay.
It was the first realisation that actually if you did something to help somebody else, i.e. you were generous to another person by giving them a powered wheelchair or whatever, that actually you felt much better about life as well. It benefited the person who did the fundraising and the help, and also the person who was the recipient.
Yeah. So one of our guests that's been on the podcast is a guy called Dr. David Hamilton, and he wrote a great book called The 5 Side Effects of Kindness. And certainly there's plenty of sort of quite a substantial body of evidence to say that kindness is quite selfish because it does give you a positive feeling and helps you in a bunch of different ways. So I completely get that.
I think it's selfish is probably the wrong word. The bottom line is it reminds you that you're supposed to be a human being helping other people. You do feel a lot better, but it taps into your inner proper self. Particularly if you're spending your life disappearing up your own backside in doing something really fatuous. Several people said to me that raising money to help a disabled child that couldn't move was the best thing they'd done all year.
Gotcha.
So I think it reminds people actually, and it taps into the natural human generosity and kindness, which is blanketed by the stresses and the strains of everyday life.
So do you think life gets in the way of people being kind?
I think that it can do, and it does. I've witnessed it in enough cases to write another book about. But the numbers of acts of kindness and generosity in the country, in the UK today, will undoubtedly run into millions. So whether someone is looking after your father with Parkinson's disease, or whether someone's looking after a disabled child, or whether the nurse is saving your, doing some operation for your doctors or teachers, there's the fire service. I mean, literally millions of unrecorded, unmentioned acts of kindness going on as we're doing this. So it's not like something. It's widespread. People are doing it all the time. The only reason you don't do it as much as you would like or you don't help people as much as you would like, is because you become either stressed out of your own mind about your own life, or you become really, really cut off when you're attempting to make a lot of money or achieve something.
Gotcha. The focus is elsewhere. Do you think people take those small acts of kindness for granted then? Do you think sort of they don't think those small acts are important when in actual fact they are?
No, I think that when people are on the receiving end of small acts of kindness, and when people are doing it, it's sort of it's like an aha moment. So one of the talks that I've done, I've talked about the importance of so the two things that make you happiest in life, and I've done lots of research into happiness, are your relationship with your family and friends, and those relationships, and also your contribution to the lives of others. So we get people to think about all of their friends and all their families, and to write down and to remember and find out how they are. So, how are they at work? How are they at health? Are they well? Are they not well? And whatever else. Have they got a job? And all that sort of thing. And then when they've done it all, we say to them, well, ring them up.
Yeah.
Go and see them, have a coffee with them, something like that.
Yeah.
And to use another expression, wasting time with friends is not wasting time. You know? So when people stop and they think about their friends and they think about their family, and they remember that someone has been very ill or someone's just lost their job, then they pause and they go out and reach out to them. And the people who reach out to feel there is somebody alongside who cares.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Very good.
So you were involved with the charity. What happened next? Did you get to a stage where you got itchy feet again? Was that the sort of...
As it grew and grew, I realised that there were more and more board meetings, and these were all people that I didn't asked to come and join me, but there were about 60 people, and the income was about £4 million. But I actually had to spend one day every month, and I told everybody this. I had to spend it with a disabled child and a handicapped child and their family.
Yeah.
Because it reminded me of why I did.
Yeah, it keeps you grounded, right? Yeah.
I actually had to go out of my way to do it, and I had to put it in the diary. And I thought, this has got
too much.
Well beyond a joke. I need to get out. So I resigned from the board, but the board were fabulous board of trustees who I'd appointed. So the first time I resigned and said, okay, I've done enough of this, I need to get out and do something else. They all refused to accept my resignation. I had to go back and do it again the following month.
Okay.
And then after that, it took me a year to get out.
Okay.
And there's an even happier ending because there were 430 people applied for my job because it was quite a high-profile job.
Yeah.
And it got down to the last 6, as all we said. And one of the 6 was a very favoured candidate.
Okay.
And on the week of the interviews, he dropped out. And so they put in another person.
Right.
And that person got the job. And that person still has a job.
Okay.
It's called Ruth Owen. And she's in a wheelchair. And she had polio from a very young age and been brought up in very difficult disadvantaged circumstances. She'd made some money and now she wanted to give back.
Gotcha.
So we were handing over a charity that we'd started to help children in a wheelchair to a chief executive who herself was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And she couldn't have been less like Mike, Mike full of charm and bullshit and all this.
Right.
But really fabulous woman. And
somebody who understood the impact, right?
Yeah.
Somebody,
And a great ambassador for the children.
Yeah.
So she's still the chief executive, and we still
Love
meet
it.
every now and then. And it was almost like supposed to happen.
Okay.
A man finds, starts charity, and then hands it over to somebody who is in a wheelchair. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, I love it, absolutely love it. So I know you moved on to do other things, and one of those things was you wrote a couple of books. Which
I wrote the first one, a book about generosity. Please take one.
So Please Take One, which is a book you gave me when we first met, and I read, I loved, and I'm halfway through Our Generous Gene, so I'm really enjoying that. But tell me about the work you do now.
Again, about 15 years ago, met this amazing, lovely man called Charles Handy, who's a management brewer. And he came to our house one day to meet my wife, with his wife, and they described how they lived. And every year they work out how much money they need to earn, or want to earn.
Okay.
And then they divide their life into 3. And one third of it, Charles works and or worked and got paid. And 1/3 of it he wrote books about management, and 1/3 of it he did pro bono work for other people. So to cut a long story short, we started doing the same.
Okay.
And so every year we work out how much money we want to earn.
Yeah.
And this has taken us through, the inevitable school fee crisis and everything else. And then we work out how we're going to earn it, which in our case is by advising companies and families how to engage with charities, philanthropy. And then we stop.
Okay.
And we do something else.
Okay.
And so, 1 year or 2 years ago, we wrote this book, Our Generous Gene, which we managed to force up to the top of the Amazon bestseller list.
Awesome.
And then last year, we organised this conference on the future of education, the environment, health and medicine and work.
Okay.
And we organised a conference for one of our clients, who's a private bank, but the significance of the choice was that it meant that we learned a lot about those subjects. So I learned a lot about the future of the environment, the future of work and so on. So it's what we call, and Charles indeed coined the phrase, maximising your life, not your income. So, plan A is to create a business that encourages companies and philanthropy and all that sort of thing, people to give money away and have a business and have an office and have lots of people helping you do it. And plan B is just to do 5 or 6 a year. Stop and do something else.
Just ensure you've got enough instead of worrying about what you can achieve by working full time.
And every year we add 20%, because we get it wrong. And the amount is not really the issue, because some years you have quiet years, some years you have busy years. And so for example, next year we're going to, this year just gone by, last year in December, we went to Bhutan. We were invited to Bhutan to study happiness. The year before that we went up the Amazon. Next year we're going to Australia and New Zealand. So it gives us time to do the sort of things we'd like to do, but work on the way. So when we went up the Amazon, we went to visit indigenous tribes. We went to Bhutan, we studied happiness.
What did you learn about happiness in Bhutan?
Well, Bhutan measure their what we call GDP. They call gross
They do, don't they? Yeah, they do.
So they have 4 serious measures of happiness, because they asked their population. There's only 700,000 people in Bhutan. It's the size of Switzerland. And years ago, they asked the population what their priorities were in their lives. And so, for example, one of them was the environment. And so now they are carbon positive. The whole country earns money from it, and it's a huge part of it is a protected area. And you can't build a house over 5 stories and all this sort of thing. So they now measure the success of the country by the happiness of the population.
Do you think, so I'm a unashamed idealist.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think so. So I tend to live my life through I joke that I've got like this lens of sort of rose-tinted glass. So I always try and look for the positive. Do you think that could be done in a country like the UK? Do you think or is there too much political pressure to keep the aspirations in the status quo? Could we change in that way? Could we look at what makes people happy? Because if you ask most people, they'd say, I want to be happy, wouldn't they?
Well, I think they would, but I think it's very different. Like in Bhutan, it's very Buddhism is like embedded in the religion of the country. They all wear traditional dress. They have a king and a queen, but they also have a government. The king's 35 or something. The queen's 28. It's a kingdom. It's like something out of a real novel. And it's small. It's small, and they can get around it, and they can do these things, which they can do in smaller countries. But the state that this country is in at the moment, whichever way you look at it, is pretty dire. And whether it's the political situation or the unbelievable poverty or the cuts, so I think that gross national happiness in the UK would be an extremely uphill struggle,
But
not least because of media. But that doesn't mean to say that
we should try. Yeah,
It doesn't mean to say you can't encourage people. As I said earlier on in the interview, there are probably a couple of million people as we speak now helping other people.
Yeah, right.
Today.
Yeah. This second,
Yeah,
not today.
literally,
This second.
So
Yeah.
they're doing wonderful things with it, and so I think it's innate. I think to try and get it through the deviousness of the media and the parliamentary system would be
Pretty tough.
Oh,
Yeah.
almost a nightmare.
It's interesting. When sort of when the subject of happiness comes up, I always find my eyes not looking to Bhutan, funny enough, but looking to places like Denmark and sort of other Scandinavian countries that are often at the top tier of happiness, and certainly they're probably more economically. I know the tax rates are higher and there's differences in in those countries, but certainly I look at that and go, what do they do so well that we could still, as a relatively Western country? And I think there's plenty of ideas that the Scandinavians, particularly the Danish, do that we could potentially use. So, our generous Gene, what do you think that people need to do to engage and inspire their own generous genes?
Well, I wrote the book, because obviously Dawkins wrote the book called The Selfish Gene.
Yeah.
And made a lot of money out of it, and I thought it was nonsense. And to be fair, I mean, he couldn't define why people did generous things.
Yeah.
So he could never explain why people would give up their lives and dive into a river to save his child. So he got a bit of a bad press for it. But anyway, I believe that people are fundamentally generous because I've seen it happen. I've seen this going on all the last 35 years of my life. And so
I think Dawkins was talking about from an evolutionary perspective as opposed to a personal one, though, wasn't it?
He was talking about how this theory of evolution is survival of the fittest. But he couldn't explain, and he admitted this, he couldn't explain why people would go out of their way to be kind to people. And he eventually decided that it was because a man was a rational person. As they could think through, they could change their behaviour.
Okay.
But anyway, so we wrote this to say, well, actually, everybody's naturally generous, and they should be given a chance to do it, and we give them stories and encourage them, and there you go. And I'm often asked what are the most generous things that I think anybody can do, and I think there are two things. The first is giving your time to anybody.
Yeah.
So, giving your time to anybody. I remember a man called Satish Kumar, who's a wonderful activist, used to be Jane Monk, and he said to me when I asked him about generosity, he said, I always see everybody, I might not see them at the time they want to see me, but I will see anybody. I have a 24 hours in a day. I can meditate, I eat, I can sleep, and I will see everybody, And I think giving people your time is, or spending time with people, coming alongside them, for want of a better expression, empathy, showing interest in other people, is a really seriously a positive way of being generous.
Yeah. So that was our first part of our interview. What do you think?
It was good.
Yeah, so we've got the second part next week, and we'll hear a lot more from Mike, where he shares his expertise.
Yep. It's my child now.
Right, what are you doing with that mic? Stop bogarting the mic.
I'm adopting the mic.
Right, get away from my mic. It's a shared mic.
I'm adopting it.
Do not hog the mic.
I'm adopting it.
Okay, what are you going to call it? Is it your new baby?
Barry.
Barry, the curse of Barry and Beryl strike again. I don't think we're ever going to give up on Barry and Beryl, do you?
No, Barry, we're not.
No, I don't think we are, Beryl. Anyway, 'tis the end.
'Tis the last final moments.
But we have got...
We got more. There's no point in me crying. We got more.
Yeah, we got more.
We got more.
We'll come back every week. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But the end is never the end, because we always have last week's question of the podcast answered this week.
Well put.
And we've got a bumper mailbag.
Mailbag.
We don't actually get
Comment
mail.
section.
Comment section of people answering last week's question, which was, if you could fly for one day, what would you spend the day doing? And Matt Wall just went, I'd fly. No, Matt, I didn't mean that. So I went back to him and went, specifically, what would you do? And he said, would love to see some amazing landmarks from the sky. Tasmin Kane said she'd fly from city to country, town from the sky is amazing. She was lucky to be taken out flying in a Cessna a few years ago and loved it. Patrick Floyd said he'd visit Machu Picchu, the Atacama Desert, parts of Southeast Asia, and he'd fly above the pyramids, far above all the human detritus. Is that how you say that word, detritus? But I think what he means
Detritus.
is if you look at the pyramids from the ground, you can see a big McDonald's there, and there's loads of rubbish that floats around. Whereas if you're looking at it from above, you probably don't see the rubbish floating around. Probably still see the KFC or the McDonald's or wherever it is. That
Bright colours they use.
Karina Murray said she'd see all the natural wonders of the world, and Russell Dames would. I'd probably wanted to visit the Amazon. I've always wanted to visit the Amazon, so I'd probably do that. I don't know whether he means Amazon or the Amazon, but I'm
Oh, I'd
assuming
like
it's
to
the
visit the Amazon store.
You'd like to visit the Amazon warehouse?
Yeah. There's one near us. I can just get a bus.
So that would be a complete waste of your flying talents then, wouldn't it?
I'd probably just soar the sky and watch the sunset and watch the birds.
On top of the Amazon warehouse.
The pigeons spend a lot of time up there.
If he could fly, he'd sit in his sofa in his pants, apparently. And Jackie Bishop would say, would she carry on walking? She wouldn't fly at all. Angelos Georgiakis, which I've probably pronounced really badly, said he'd fly to New Zealand. Two of his friends who travel a lot absolutely loved it. So I'd say New Zealand. Robert Pender would waste his use of flying by standing and watching TV. And our mate Charlie Goodman says, how fast? If it was fast enough, I'd pack in as much as the world as possible. Hanging out with old friends in China, Dubai, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, France, Sweden and the USA. That is a busy day. That is a busy day. Caroline Ball, new entrant to the show, said, assuming I could fly quickly and low to the ground, I'd write millions of positive quotes from wonderful people on bright, biodegradable paper, attach them to mini food parcels with allergen info, and then sprinkle them all over the world. The power of encouragement, kindness, and delicious food. It's quite nice, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like that. Benedict Wright said, I'd probably just go and visit Father Christmas for the day. See what all the fuss is about. He bowled up. All right, Crimbo, what's all the fuss about? And Planager really liked this one because she constantly dreams about flying, and usually it's around mountain tops. She can't think of anything better than soaring majestically in the clouds with the birds. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it does.
I'd like to do that as well. And Amy Rowe would head to the Highlands of Scotland.
Scotland.
Yeah, that was really good.
Scotland.
Scotland.
Scottish.
It's been a murder.
Murder.
And she'd go from castle to mountain and probably follow a river or two. So people were really inspired by that question. I love the imagination.
Nobody tried jumping out of windows.
No, so which is good. And that, my friends, is definitely it for another episode of the Kindness Project. We'll see you next time.
Bye.